I'd like to call regular meeting of council to order, Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. Approval of the agenda, please. Councilor Norbury.
That the Tuesday, February 16th, 2021 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Seconder, Councilor Korkalka. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Adoption of minutes. 3.1, January 25th, 2021 budget meeting recommendation, please. Councilor Majinski.
At the Monday, January 25th, 2021 budget meeting minutes be adopted as presented.
Seconder, Councilor Lee. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 3.2, February 1st, 2021 regular meeting of council minutes recommendation, please. Councilor Lehman.
Monday, February 1st, 2021 regular council meeting minutes be adopted as presented.
Seconder, Councilor Norbury. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes, council? Staff? Thank you. Moving on to proclamations. 5.1, Chamber of Commerce Week. Chamber of Commerce Manager to request council to proclaim February 15th to 19th, 2021 Chamber of Commerce Week. I have a proclamation here. Whereas the Tumbler Ridge Chamber of Commerce is integral for representing the voice of all business in Tumbler Ridge, and whereas chambers leverage platforms and tools to ask questions, encourage conversation, spark discussion, and action those insights to further community development, and whereas chambers support and advocate for policy development based on innovative ideas, on-the-ground experience, and using evidence-based data, and whereas chambers speak for the power of the crowd and vitalize and elevate regions by inviting business opportunities, pushing for progress, and by providing organizations the tools needed to represent their best interests with government and within their community. And whereas the important role that chambers play for our country is recognized on a grander scale, facilitation conversation about the state of our province, where we're going, and what we need to get there for the sake of all British Columbians. I, Mayor Keith Bertrand, and Council of the District of Tumbler Ridge of the Province of British Columbia, do hereby proclaim and declare February 15th to 19th, 2021 shall be known as Chamber of Commerce Week. Thank you very much, Ms. Chambray, for that.
You're welcome. Did you want me to say anything about Chamber Week?
Sure. If you have a comment, please.
For sure. So Chamber Week is an opportunity for chambers across the province and their 36,000 members provincially to celebrate the opportunity and the work that they do for BC businesses. Our business network goal is to collectively further the interests of business, to network, promote, and advocate for their needs. So therefore, we've asked that you would declare this week the BC Chamber Week.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
And thank you.
Okay, moving on to consent agenda. Recommendation, please. Councilor Korkalka.
That all items on Tuesday, February 16th, 2021 consent agenda be moved for information.
Participant exiting.
Seconded.
Jerry Lynn.
Councilor Norbury. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any items on the consent agenda council would like to lift? Councilor Kirby.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to lift 7.2.
For discussion. Seconder, Councilor Korkalka. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councilor Kirby.
Thank you, Member Trent. The TRMBA is looking for a letter of support for the pump track and also a motion. So I'd like to put that forward that council issues a motion of support and a letter of land use request for the TRMBA according to the letter here.
Ms. Thompson, are we dealing with that request in 9.1 or is another motion needed?
Thank you, Member Trent. There's two separate motions for two separate grants.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Councilor Kirby. Seconder, Councilor Norbury. Discussion. Councilor Howe.
Once again, first heard and deferred, are we just waiving that again? Generally, we look at things in the consent agenda, we review it, and then we bring it back to the next meeting. But we do this a lot, we just look at them and immediately put a motion forward. I'm gonna do it again.
Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I think we've already established that since we received the information on a Thursday, it's first heard on Thursday, so we have time to gather the information we need. So it's different than a delegation coming in, presenting us information fresh on a Tuesday. So at this point in time, I feel comfortable supporting the TRMBA's request in both of these.
More comment, questions? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Anything else on the consent agenda, Council? Councilor Norbury?
I may be skipping a couple, but 7.5.
Discussion? Elka? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councilor?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. The reason why I've asked for this to be brought up is that there's an opportunity for a complimentary registration for the Kofi convention. And if there's no other interested parties, I would like to utilize that complimentary registration.
I wasn't planning to attend. Is anyone else on council wishing to attend this? Yeah, I don't see a problem, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Just a question to Councilor Norbury. Is there a complimentary admission to anybody on the community forest as well?
Councillor Norbury?
All I can do is speak to previous years past, and this has normally been for mayor and council designates rather than individuals in the forest. And so we haven't, the community forest has not received any complimentary registration or anything like that.
I'd like to bring forward 7.6 for discussion. Seconder, Councillor Kirkowka. Favor? Opposed? Carried. So we did have a conversation with Mr. Bettis here last week, clarifying what this grant application is for. And it is for 2 wireless towers, one east and one west of Tumbler Ridge, to increase our wireless capability in our region. And I am fully in support of this. So I'd like to put forward a motion to ask staff to develop a letter of support for this grant. Seconder, Councillor Majinski. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to business. NDIT Community Places Grant Application. Report dated February 16, 2021 from the Director of Economic Development and Tourism regarding Places Grant. Recommendation, please. Councilor Kirby.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation that staff submit an application to NDIT Community Places Grant of $30,000 for the Tumbler Ridge Mountain Bike Association pump track project.
Seconder, Councillor Norbury. Discussion. Ms. Thompson, just to clarify, this is a different grant than the Community Spaces Grant. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Yes, it is.
Thank you. Councillor Kirkowka.
Just my only question is this grant that we're applying for going directly to the mountain bike association, or is it for staff to use? So is it to be used for when they do the geotech, whatever, or is this directly going to the mountain bike association?
Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand, through council. This would go directly to, it would come through the district and flow to the Mountain Bike Association.
Any other comments or questions? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Great, thank you. 9.2, NDIT Grants, Housing Needs Assessment, Capital Investment Analysis and Marketing Initiatives Grants. Report dated February 16, 2021 from the Director of Economic Development and Tourism requesting staff submit 3 applications for capital investment grants. Recommendation, please. Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Member Trent. I'll move that staff submitted application to NDIT Capital Investment Analysis Grant of $10,000 to develop a business case for rural residential and other mixed residential development in Tumbler Ridge, and that staff submit an application to NDIT Housing Needs Assessment Grant of $10,000 for the required Tumbler Ridge Housing Needs Assessment that meets the requirements of the local government statutes, Housing Needs Reports Amendment Act, and further that staff submit an application to NDIT Marketing Initiatives Grants up to $10,000 for snowmobiling and snow biking social media winter marketing project.
Seconder. Councillor Norby, discussion? Okay, question, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. 9.3, functional review, dated February 16, 2021 by the Chief Administrative Officer, reporting on functional review conducted with Gordon McIntosh. I'll move this report for discussion. Seconder. Councillor Kirkowka, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Ms. Thompson, could you give us a brief overview of how it all went there, please?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So we did have Gordon McIntosh come out and sit down with senior staff, and we went through what our functions are in each department. And from that, we were able to determine where our gaps are and where we see that we're able to start looking in a little deeper and what we're able to do to increase our function of the district. So this is the first report that comes back with what our functions are and some strategic things that we can do and in order to make the district better functioning for us as senior staff. And at the next meeting, there will be a report that will be coming back that had to do with the service review and our service capacity. And so that's a little bit deeper into what we have for service capacity in the district.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions? Okay, I just want to say thank you, Ms. Thompson, for getting this going. I think this is really important information, not only for staff, but also for council. And for all of staff, I think too, it's a good opportunity to share ideas and improve. So good job so far. Okay, moving on to 9.4, airport operations. Dated February 16th, 2021, from Director of Operations and Infrastructure regarding costs associated with increasing service levels to the Tumbler Ridge Airport. Recommendation, please. I should say, does any of council wish to discuss? Councillor Kirkowka. Seconder. Councillor Norbury. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Kirkowka.
Yeah, I don't have much to discuss, but I mean, I think we take the opportunity to thank staff for doing up the report, to come back with the information. And I think it's best for the public to realize, you know, it came out of an airport being shut down, possibly maybe some emergency docs needing to be done, which Stars had to do, or Air BC did. I think it shows that it's probably something that we cannot fund in regards to Mr. Beal's report. I mean, different sand, different salt, different tools, different machinery. So, I mean, I think it's a huge report done up by staff, and I think they should, you know, at least get pass it back to get the information to us, to me, in a fairly timely manner. And I think it's going to realize that we live in the north. Our airport is not a fully functioning manned airport. I think, to me, staff does the best can do to keep it open as much as they can. And I think, you know, the taxpayers should realize that. And, you know, I think we just try to keep tools there for staff to keep it open as much as possible in the winter months.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Howe.
So would we think that we would classify this as a summer airport? That, like, that's the only time that we can utilize it effectively to, like, if we had to emergency rush somebody out, like, generally it's going to be Stars that's called, but in the summertime you could get fixed wing plane in here, so to me, it's, we can utilize this for 5 months of the year reliably, 4 or 5 months of the year reliably. How much money are we gonna sink into the airport in the name of safety? Like, to me, I think we need a better understanding of stars and our ability to call on them, and is there anything that they're not allowed to respond to? And we have to weigh that out at some point here, because, I mean, to repave the airport for what? Like, if that's coming down the pipe, we're talking about putting in a new building that got pushed off this year, thankfully. And, you know, we gotta have a better understanding. Can stars always come here for every type of incident that we have, or no? Because if that's the case, why are we keeping the airport open at all?
Councillor Kirkowka.
Yeah, so I can't answer what Star's comments would be. What I can say is now, it's actually not something that, they don't match call for, they call patient care transport. And that's who decides if it's, they can't find anything else, can't get a fixed wing, but they need to be emergency back, can't go to Dawes Creek or Chatwin or St. John, so that's their job to either deal with Stars. Air BC came in with their big helicopter here a couple weeks ago, that is now stationed in Prince George, so that's the patient care transfer center to make those decisions for our residents and for the people that need it. I don't disagree with you when it comes to the comment about the airport, summertime airport. I think we need to look into that and the funding that we're going to put into that airport, whether it's building, the lanes have already been done, but the runways and all that. I think we should probably indulge into the budget what we're looking at doing there when we can only use it for so many months a year. But in regards to emergency evacs for patients, emergencies, I think that's up to BC Ambulance or the health center, the doctors, and I think they have the tools to call or use to find out how they're transported.
Councillor Howe, follow up.
Well, I mean, like, I don't understand much about the patient care transfer network or whatever, but perhaps we should have some type of conversation with them and let them know what we're thinking of doing. That, we're talking about a major renovation to our airport. Is there any point in doing that? Should we be maybe thinking about a heliport close to our hospital here? We had discussed it in the past that over by the Visitor Information Center, there is a pad that it lands on. But would it be better if we created a permanent one or one with better lighting? Could they come in different conditions? To find out what is their criteria when they decide, yeah, we're going to use a plane to come into Tumbler Ridge or we're going to use a helicopter. I mean, to me, you got to be losing a lot of time of getting somebody back to Tumbler Ridge in an ambulance, working on them in the clinic, and then getting them back out to the airport to fly them out when you could just go out in Stars. I understand it takes a while for whether a plane or a helicopter to get here, but really, when we talked about the airport, all we've ever really talked about as it being an essential service for Tumbler Ridge is because of safety. We've never been like, geez, we'd like to land tourist planes in here and we need to upgrade it for that. Like, we're never going to get to that point. And, so maybe that would be the conversation that we need to have to understand what patient care's criteria is before they decide to come into Tumbler Ridge. And if we fix the airport, are we saving 15 minutes? Or are we actually shooting ourselves in the foot by doing that? Like, I'd like to have more conversation with them to see what the criteria is.
Absolutely, we can certainly set that up. Councillor Majinski?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I think Councillor Howe brings up a good point about the potential definition of what our airport could be or what it is. If it is for just summertime use, maybe we could look into Canadian aviation regulations and see if we can just have it stated as a summertime airport instead of having it full year-round service or, updated or maintained during the winter months. I don't know if there is different classifications there, but maybe it's something that would be worth looking into.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. On the discussion of the airport and its use, I think I would also be interested in knowing how much the airport is used for other ventures. We're talking mostly health, safety, very important topics, but Ridge Motors operates out of there. I know some of the pilots there, very busy over the summer, right, with forestry, fire, mine. Also, how much is the mine for their exploration stuff, right? So I guess when we're in the discussion of do we leave it, do we need to upgrade it, do we need, what service level do we need for the runway? And just still utilize it for its current capacity.
Absolutely. Councillor Howe, then Lehman?
Yeah, so I have spoke with somebody in the last month here who plans on setting up a some type of a tourist attraction that he's going to fly people out of our airport to Sioux Falls and to different areas and this and that. But like he is in the process of getting certification so that he can land on water, and he can also do some other type of certification where he can land on like a field or a dirt pad or something like that. So I'd like to talk with some of the people like that are utilizing it. His plan is to to use the leverage of the Global Geopark to try to build this tourism business for himself in Tumbler Ridge. But I mean, the outlay of cash, if he can land on a dirt strip and wherever, why can't he land on what we have presently in place out there? I mean that we need some more information when we get to that point where we decide what we're doing with that airport.
Absolutely.
That's to me, it's two avenues we got to look at, right?
Yeah, definitely a stakeholder engagement kind of thing.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
like as for Ridge Roaders, I mean, they don't need anything there. Like they need the pad that they have to land their helicopters on. They don't need a giant concrete pad. They just can land on grass or whatever, right? So I mean, it's not going to affect their business if we don't go ahead and repave in the airport, right? So
No,
but
they'll
we already fixed the lighting, right? So that was we put money into fixing the lighting with the intention that we're going to keep going, and we never had all the information at that point. We need to get that information, decide if we need to keep going forward with this.
True. Yeah, no, and the lighting was majority grant money as well.
That's right.
Councillor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
From what I understand, the reason that the airport was closed for most of this, or most of the time, is due to lighting. Now that the lighting has been fixed, I think that'll nullify some of the closures. And the other thing is, most of the time, even during the winter, the runway stays fairly bare because it melts off. But apparently this year is a little bit different from the rest. So just in talking to some people, it's a problem that this year is a little bit special because of the weather, but with the lighting being fixed, I think we'll have way less shutdown of the airport than we have in the last little while.
Councillor Kirkcalka?
Yeah, so I think the airport's still important. That's definitely a point I wanted to cross, and I didn't take that off the table. I mean, I think Council Lehman just mentioned it. This year was a little bit unpredictable in regards to the rain and everything else. And, I mean, in a staff report, it dictates what kind of salt or what they're not allowed to use on the runway. But I think the runway's still important. We may have, whether it's summer or not, or you hope that the winter is mild or less freezing rain where the town can keep it cleared so people can land. Because to me, if we do need a fixed wing emergency air backup and our runway is open, I think that it should be available. And if that means we need to look at repaving, I think that's what we need to look at doing. I mean, it's not just for emergency airbags, it's for industrial services that are in our community, chemicals, the piece of schools, tech coal. I definitely don't want to see us not get into a discussion about moving forward with the airport in regards to paving, stuff like that. Maybe it's I think it was Council Lehman brought forward, like what does it need to be up to for some of the standards of some of these aircraft to land. I think that's the information we need to get from our partnership there to find out what they need for a landing strip. But I don't think we'd want to get rid of an asset that we have within our community. If that's the conversation here, I definitely would not support that.
Yeah.
So helicopters are totally different. Councillor Howard already mentioned. I mean, they pretty much take off from just outside their buildings. But I think we need to reach out to like the chemicals, the industrial partners, probably. Whether it's BC Ambulance, that's a partnership that we need to talk to in regards to the airport for their aircrafts. I mean, I don't want to get rid of that. I think the staff's worked on a report in regards to if we want to have a full ran airport in the wintertime. I don't think we want to pay for that. It doesn't mean that we haven't had aircrafts land here in December. Just not this year due to, we can't control the freezing rates.
Yep. Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and I think the conversation is, Councilor Procalca, is do we want to spend $7 million to have an airport that doesn't get used in Tumbler Ridge? Or how much does it get used for $7 million? That's what we were talking about when Mr. Wall was here as the CAO, is how much it was going to cost us to fix the airport and all the upgrades were required was going to be about $7 million. That's what we're talking about. So to me, stakeholder engagement would be a good place to start. And secondly, the patient care transfer unit, to ask them how it works. what, can we get away with a helicopter 95% of the time? Like, I don't understand. I know you were in that business before and you understand a lot more around it, but to me, it seems like it's always helicopters that I hear of that gets people out of town, so.
Yeah, no, we're certainly gonna need to have some options on the table and also stakeholder engagement for that. Councillor Howe?
So would this be something that council would want to move to a P&P to have a good discussion about, those types of things, like, getting stakeholders involvement, send a letter out to Ridge Roaders and whoever else generally uses the airport and patient care transfer network? Is that a P&P meeting discussion, you guys?
I think we can start there, absolutely. It's worth conversation and, it's really gonna need to be another functional review of our airport to really see how it's being used and how we can invest for the future for it. So, yeah, we can certainly set that up. Okay, moving on to 9.5, Tumbler Ridge Golf and Country Club Restaurant Lounge, 2021. 22 EOI. Report dated February 16th, 2021 from the Recreation Service Manager regarding seeking an operator for the Tumbler Ridge Golf and Country Club Restaurant for the 2021 season. Recommendation, please. Councilor Norbury.
The council approves the Tumbler Ridge Golf and Country Club expression of interest number 2021-01 to lease the restaurant lounge as presented. And that council directs administration to release the expression of interest number 2021-01 with the closing date of March 17th, 2021, and to report back to council the recommended operator for the 2021 golf season.
Seconder. Councilor Kirkowka, discussion. Councilor Kirkowka.
So this will be a 3-year, as per previous policy.
I believe it's this year with an option for 2. Is that correct, Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Yes, that's correct.
Councilor Kirkowka.
So don't we have to make a motion to waive our previous policy that we have it stated for a 3-year lease? Just like the campground? It was made up in a vote, the policy that it's a 3-year lease?
Ms. Thompson.
One moment, please. Thank you. So we do have a lease policy that it can be for 3 years.
Councilor Kirkowka.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I actually remember this policy came forward because it was a heavy discussion, and we actually tried to bring it in after they went out. And they tried to bring it in that year before they opened up the bids, and that was voted on and moved to the following year for the 3-year lease. Not only for the golf course, country club, restaurant, lounge, but also the Moncton RV park.
Yeah, I think from what
It just concerns me that we're doing it this way for a year with possible year extension, but we actually had a policy that we voted on to do them as 3 years. I mean, I'd still believe within that policy or the documents that they do have a way to get out of it if they don't want to do it for the second or third year, but it's actually for 3 years, so they know the investment opportunity.
Yeah, trying to recollect, and I think our motivation was to try and streamline it as well, so we didn't have to go out to RFP every year. Ms. Thompson, can you clarify the policy, please? Absolutely.
I will actually have Ms. Corville respond.
Thank you.
I'm not completely sure of the whole policy.
Thank you.
Ms. Corville? Yeah.
I believe you can hear me.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, there is a policy that says that when someone enters into a lease with whatever operation they're doing, that it is for 3 years. However, last year with COVID, that policy it was waived last year. Council released the operator that was a successful proponent, and because of COVID, is when an operator goes in there, they don't know what the ramifications are going to be and restrictions and everything else. So it's their business plan, I guess. So that's what happened with the policy.
So So we don't have to waive it again in this case, or is this an option that staff has to give a 3-year or a 1-year? With,
Well, you should ideally waive the policy if council so chooses. Or, you know, you can commit someone, maybe the proponent won't want to do it for 3 years. This is something that could be negotiated at the table upon approval.
okay.
Yeah.
So if we were to move this motion forward, be going against policy. So we should be leaving policy prior to making an amendment.
Waive policy prior to, or
Okay, I'll need that policy number, please. Counselor Krokowka?
Yeah, so my recollection is a little bit different than staff's. What happened previous was the previous tenant had it, and we were gonna move into a 3-year the following year, but in the lease that was signed with staff and this proponent, it actually had in their lease that you could extend for a year. So that proponent came forward to look for that extension, and I think it was granted by this council. And once we reached out to the proponent, it was decided that due to COVID, that she decided that didn't want the rent. So it wasn't due to all that. So I am not in favor, again, of the staff's recommendation in regards to a 1-year with possible 2-year. I think we should stick with the 3-year concept. That was the idea of it, was once the people can invest, if they decide to go after this expression of interest, they can invest in equipment or whatever they may need, they get to split it over the 3 years. That was the idea, same with Milton RV. All support the recommendation.
Thank you. Counselor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Yeah, I definitely support 3-year operations. As Councilor Hucka makes a good point, is that when you start up an operation, it's easier to plan to get your return on investment over 3 years versus 1. But I think this juncture, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now, and I think we should be starting with the 1 year because we're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't know if, this is speculation on my part, but I don't know how many people are going to want to enter in a 3-year lease with the uncertainty. It would make sense that they have 1 year to give it a try and then sort of see what's happening at the end of their term for an option of renewal. Because, you know, at the end of this 1-year term, we could be seeing an upswing, economic upswing, or we could see it's remaining stagnant and realize that it's not as successful as they could be. So I think I would support waiving policy in this instance for a 1-year versus.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Howe?
Does the current contract, the way it's written here, lock the person in for 3 years? The way I understand it, it is a 1-year contract. And after 1 year, if they choose to do 2, they can. If they choose to do 3, they can. So that protects the person who's coming in to do the lease either way. To me, we need to look out for what is absolutely best for our residents and community. Number one, getting somebody in there would be awesome so that we don't have to pay we get the tax money, we get the lease money, and we don't have to pay the utility costs down there. That's good for the community. Also, having somebody in there so that the golfers and people visiting the community have another dining option. Who's gonna take that on? I don't know. But to me, we're best off to say, if we can get anybody in there at this point because of COVID, we should be trying to do whatever we can with this contract to get somebody in. And it's a negotiation as well. Somebody may come in and say, I'm only willing to do 6 months, or I'm only willing to do, and if we got nobody else and that's the only thing we got, that's great. So this is wide open in my mind. You can do 1, you can do 2, you can do 3, and they're not locked into anything. And it could still be a negotiation when they come in. They may be the only proponent and they only want to work in June and July for all people, right?
Yeah.
We got to get somebody in there. We got to get this thing moving forward as quick as possible.
Yeah, I agree, actually. The expression of interest really doesn't lock us into waiving policy at this point either. So when it comes back with a successful proponent, we can deal with the policy issue then, right? And then it's all up for negotiation with the proponent until that time. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Kukalka?
I disagree. I think we need to weigh the policy first. I mean, it says for the 2021 goal season, it's 1 year. That is not where our policy states that this council.
This says 3.
We're asking to release the expression of interest. So, Ms. Thompson, can you clarify, please?
Thanks, Member Chair. So, the expression of interest is Yes, it is for the 2021-22 or 2021 season. However, within the lease agreement, if you look on page 55, there is a clause in there for renewal that would allow the tenant, if not in default, to have the ability to renew the lease for 2 years. So you can amend the expression of interest for 1 year with the option to renew for 2.
Okay. And then as far as waiving policy, do we need to waive it tonight or when the successful proponent comes?
I would do it when the successful proponent comes back. You know, you do have options, this is just the expression of interest before you enter into the lease.
Councillor Krukowka?
Yeah, and the previous policy doesn't state for the golf season. The previous policy states about the operation. They can actually run it through the winter. That's proponent so decides. This one says golf season. This is some of the concerns I have when I go back. This one says golf season. The other policy that we voted on, if they wanted to open it up until Christmas time, that was their choice. So it's kind of different than what we set, the policy that we set. Now we got a motion for that we're going to release it only for the golf season, which to me I believe ends mid-October. Not sure. I mean, I golf, but not that much. So I mean that totally has changed to me what this gospel is. And it was up to the proponent if they wanted to keep it open till January, February, or shut it down after golf season. So there's some changes there. Just my opinion in the motion.
Yeah, and I think the last time the proponent wanted to go longer, there's obviously added costs going into the winter, so that it came back to council for further discussion to modify the lease possibly. I think stating the golf season is appropriate because this lease would not be applicable in the winter months because it would be a completely different economics there. So I'm in support of this golf season. Councillor Norbury?
Nope.
Okay, Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. You know, if we don't go with policy, we could be losing a proponent that is interested in the 3-year lease. If we keep it the way it is, there's still room to negotiate. Here, we're already starting off with 1 year, with the possibility of 2. We go with a 3-year, then we're also getting money for our months that are closed here, if I'm reading this right. So if a person is taking the 3-year lease, that also ties them to the months October through to May, that where they're also paying for all the costs of utilities down there, but they're also able to keep it open. So I will be voting against this because I think we should start with the 3-year to see if there's anybody interested. And then put it out there again after that.
Ms. Thompson, in the expression of interest, does the proponents have the option to negotiate that 3 years? Or, like, I definitely understand the cautiousness of going with a 1 year with a 2-year renewal, but I'm just wondering how variable this is at the moment.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So the expression of interest, we are requiring a business plan that comes in with it, right? So if they do want to extend it for 3 years, you have that ability to do so, right? It's like we're looking for this year, but if somebody has a business plan that says, but I want to do it for another 2 years, that can be evaluated with the business plan, which is part of the expression of interest, right? It's like 60% of the business plan. So if the business plan comes in and says, if we have 2, and one says, I want it for a year, the other one says, I want it for a year plus 2, you still have the ability to evaluate on that business plan and what has been proposed.
Councillor Kirby, follow up?
COVID has thrown a wrench in here, but still, it was better business for us in the long run to go with a 3-year lease on that. And I think we should stick with that myself and see if there's someone, out there that is willing to take that on. And that's, I'll vote against this.
Okay, Councillor Howe?
So the way I understand it's negotiable. So like if I came in and I wanted the restaurant and I said I want it for 3 years, I could come in and negotiate that. I could also come in and say, I know you're only doing a 3-year lease, but I want a 10-year lease. and you can come in and negotiate that. That's the whole point of an expression of interest. This is the loosely based what we want to see out of it, the minimums that we want. Then someone can come in and we get the chance to decide when we see the packages come in. And I don't look at this as a negative on either side. If we get one person comes in that says they want 1 year and another person comes in they want 3, we get the choice to decide. Do we want to lock it in for 3 years at a lower price maybe, or go with the 1 season? And same thing as negotiating for the off season. So this is set up as a for the golf course, but there was another person who ran it through the winter one time. We never expected that was going to happen. We had to actually change it so that we could continue going on with it. I just think we need to be open with this. We need to get this on. We all know what we want down there. We want somebody in there. And if somebody wants to rent it through the winter, we'd also love to have that. The only thing that we ever concern ourselves with is an unfair advantage for one person over another. And at this point, as far as I'm concerned, everybody knows this thing is up for lease at this point now. And if you wanted it in 2 years' time, but you don't want it this year now, you may have to bite the bullet and take it anyways. So to me, there's a lot of negotiation in here. It leaves staff a lot of room to move and maneuver and get somebody in who wants whatever they want. To me, if I was going to lease it, I would want to pay a lot less in year 1 and more in year 2 and 3. Because year 1 is still COVID, right? So it has to be open for negotiation. And we can't be locked solid. I mean, it has to be 3 years, and we want you for 3 years. We'd love to have you for 3 years. If you say you're coming for 3 years, you got a better chance to get it than the person who's applying for 1. But leave it open so that we get the best chance to get anybody in there at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Councillor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the whole thing is, somewhere in there you gotta let them know that there's a possibility that you can have it for 3 years. But if you force somebody to take it for 3 years, you're not gonna get very many people. And the other thing is, if you think that somebody's gonna try and run that into winter, that's a slim possibility, because, I mean, others have tried. It's a pretty tough go, especially not only with COVID, but even in normal circumstances down there, you're out of sight, out of mind. Doesn't matter how good the food is, because you're out of sight, chances are you're gonna end up going somewhere else instead of going down there. It's a tough sell down there. So I think we need to make it as good as possible, I guess, for somebody to run it. I mean, we don't need to give away the whole thing, but I think we gotta, the idea is to get somebody down there. That's first and foremost. And then we'll just see from there. But I think you have to mention that, you know, they do have the potential of actually running it for 3 years. But I think if you force them to run it for 3 years, that's gonna cut a lot of people off.
Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Just wanted to remind council that we changed that to a 3-year plan because of business and what they wanted. And that was the way for someone to establish themselves, because first year, you're just getting your foot in, then you start making money. So this isn't, you know, I still think that this is a good, our actual policy is a good policy, and it's there to hopefully see people succeed. And of course, we want to see our asset thrive down there. We want someone in there. So, you know, going from this 1 to extending isn't bad, but I can see that we waived it last year, but our policy says 3 years, and I still think that that's the way to go.
Councillor Kukalka?
Yeah, and to me, we didn't waive it last year. The proponent actually had it in her contract that was signed with staff to do an extension, which I think council was unaware of when we made the decision to put that policy until it came forward from the proponent.
About the scoring matrix, Ms. Thompson, can you give council a bit of a briefing on the scoring matrix used for the expression of interest? Or have they been adjusted at all?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I don't have that information with me today. This is just the expression of interest. I'm not fully versed in everything else that goes forward.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, call to question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 9.6, schedule of meetings, February and March 2021. Ms. Thompson, when do you expect our next, or staff will be ready for the next?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. We would like to request request a special meeting for budget, which will be the operational budget, for Thursday, March the 4th. And in requesting that, apologies that I wasn't able to bring operational budget for February 22nd. However, we do need to waive our budgeting policy for that, because we are to have it by the March 1st, I believe, for operating budget.
Yeah, and so when will we be dealing with that waive?
The waiving of the policy?
Yeah.
If you're all right with it, we would have it prepared for the 22nd to be able to waive the policy. For February 22nd, which is our budget meeting, we do have discussions that we are able to have, but for operational, we would be able to have something prepared for that meeting to acknowledge the waiving the policy.
Okay, thank you. Comments, Councillor Howe?
So we're still having a budget meeting on the 22nd, but it's not gonna contain everything that we need to do on the 22nd. So is there any possibility we could move the budget meeting you want to do on the 4th to the 1st?
Ms. Thompson?
Instead of having it on a Thursday, we continue to have it on a Monday. Thursday doesn't work for me, that's why I asked. And if we need somewhere to do that regular council meeting, can that not be added to the shortened budget meeting on the 22nd?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Member Bertrand, through council. So for the 22nd, that meeting has already been prepared. Staff wouldn't have time to back everything up from March 1st to accommodate the reports from March 1st back to February 22nd. We can, even the 2nd or 3rd of March, I was just trying to pick later in the week so that we would have more information, but we should be able to pull it or have the information for the 2nd. If that works better for budget, operational. It is operational budget, so it'll be a full meeting that day.
Council? Councillor Majinski?
So we have the regular council meeting at 5 p.m. on the 1st. What if we did the operational during the day? Would that be something to entertain or no? Because that will be probably a pretty long day, but then we're not getting into overtime and excess. Because we're going to be doing another day later in the week, it's still going to be overtime for staff. Just a thought.
You're a go-getter. Councillor Kirkowka?
Yeah, no disrespect, I would not be interested in that at all. Sorry. The Monday during the days are tough on me. I mean, if that's what council decides, I'm fine on attending. My question, I guess, would be Councillor Howe, if March 2nd works for him, and if it works for him, his days work better.
Councillor Howe?
Yeah, like Tuesdays and Thursdays are tough days for me, but Thursday is definitely out, but it's, to me, I like Councillor Midzinski's idea of doing something through the day. It doesn't be 9 a.m., but if we could do something and we started at 2 o'clock or something that could accommodate Councillor Perkauka's schedule on the 22nd or on the 1st. So, I don't know.
Councillor Norbury?
Well, 3rd. Staff said 3rd at 5, Tuesday, Thursdays don't work, but it works. There we go. Don't need wings. Don't need wings, just Joker. We can do Wednesday.
Wednesday on the 3rd? Going once? Going twice? Sold. Daytime or nighttime? Councillor Howe?
Evening works.
Evening? Everyone in favor? Okay. Wednesday the 3rd. 5 o'clock. Thank you. Any other issues with the schedule? Councilor Majinski?
Just a question for the February 22nd budget meeting. The grant aids and the service are going to be on there as well?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Member Bertrand, council. We are not prepared with future service and granting aid. Those will be coming with the operational budget.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Kirkowka?
I'm not, thank you, Richard. I'm not sure, Sal, about, can you tell us what the budget meeting for the 22nd is including then?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. That is more explanation on
Notice the motion at the February 1st, 2021 council meeting. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. After having a conversation with Ms. Thompson today, it is not needed, this meeting is not needed to be enclosed. We thought so at the beginning, and this is just something that I'd like to bring to the PNP, and that's the council schedule a PNP meeting to discuss alignment of boards and committees.
Okay. Seconder? Councillor Norbury, discussion? Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand, and thank you, Councillor Curry, for, changing the format. I did have concerns about closed meetings. I like transparency, and I think this might cause a little bit of concern, but being an open meeting, I think that's great, exciting.
Yeah, I just have a question, Councillor Kirby, as far as alignment of boards and committees, are you looking to view the list of liaisons for all the boards and committees? Or if you could just clarify the alignment.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Bertrand. It's just to see what committees and boards we're sitting on. I have got a kind of a mix and match where I like to, sometimes I have some tourism committees and then and some that aren't, and just how it can work better to fit into my schedule as well. It's like I'm having a couple of issues, and just how to communicate with others too on those boards. Basically, my Thursdays are really busy, and I'm kind of really not aware of what other councillors are at, and just to sit down and just discuss it, and just on reporting as well. Those are some of the topics I'd like to talk, and just to see how everybody's really doing on their boards and committees, and also just to talk about closed agendas on our boards and how we can address those when a board goes into in camera. What is our role as council? So just some conversation we haven't had in a while, and just to get some feedback from everybody.
Sure thing, yep. Good time to check in, for sure. Councillor Majinski?
So will this be on the March 8th meeting?
That's our next PNP? Yes. Yep. Okay, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Great, thank you. Councillor's business? Thank you, Councillor Norbury, for sitting in with Northern Health. Any other councillor's business? Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I received an email today regarding travelers going to Municipal Hall and getting stuck. I got forwarded from Economic Development, and just to let councillors know that people are still traveling that road, and I don't know what we can do. I know it's been mentioned to the Vic Center to try to, let people know that this is not a seasonal road. So just to, they were talking about signage, and just to let council be aware that that's an issue that's going on, I guess.
Yeah.
Especially with search and rescue having to put that out to remind people, don't go.
Yeah, and I think we have discussed this issue with ministry as well. I can follow up with them as well as our to see if there's any kind of extra signage we can put out there. It's important to notify them that it's not plowed for sure. Myself, I had a fairly quiet week, just a meeting with the Resource Municipalities Coalition, as well as the call with TELUS. Any other councillor business? Okay, question and answer period. Ms. Thompson, did you receive any questions?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I have not had any questions.
Okay, thank you. Resolution to close. I'd like to move that the meeting be closed to the public in accordance with the Community Charter, Section 91 IJK as follows. I is the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and that, in the view of the council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. Seconder, Councilor Kirkowka, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. 10-minute recess, please.
Okay, tomorrow, when you're ready to, now. Noon and then peel up.
Yeah, do it earlier so you can get your coffee there and there, that's fine.
Yeah, well, whenever you're in.
And where are you parked?
I am part, I'm